Chapter 9. An arrest is made. Armand quickly took the paperwork from the rookie cop, scanning it. His lips twitched and his shoulders relaxed. It wasn't the Brownie. "What?" growled the police chief. He snatched the paperwork out of Armand's hand, reading it. He grunted. "This doesn't make any sense." "Look at page 3, suggested Armand. "The Brownie from the lab test negative for the poison. While it was laced with cannabis, it wasn't deadly. If you go down the list, you'll see there was another food item at the bakery which tested positive. The food item also matches the stomach contents found in the autopsy. The Brownie wasn't even consumed by Bart. Molly and Ivy aren't your killers." "About time you figured it out," muttered Molly. I gave her an elbow to the ribs, hoping to quiet her. While I was relieved we had been cleared as suspects, I wanted to know what the food item was which had been poisoned, and who might have had access to it. The food might just determine who had killed Bart. Perhaps, if we were quiet enough, they would forget we were here and say something important to the case. "It has been a while since you've handled a homicide," noted Armand quietly. "Are you certain you don't want me to at least assist?" "You are on foot patrol for traffic tickets until further notice, after the stunt at the farmer's market," growled the police chief. "See if you can handle it without screwing it up." Armand clenched his teeth. "Yes, sir." For a moment I felt a little sorry for Armand. Then I remembered he had locked me in a cell overnight, and the feeling passed. "Get these two out of my station. Warren, get Judge Orr on the phone. I need an arrest warrant made out," barked the police chief before striding away. "Who is he going to arrest?" I asked Armand a little worriedly. "You know I can't tell you," remarked a gloomy Armand, reaching into a pocket to pull out a pack of nicotine gum. "However, I doubt you are going to like it." "The important part is the two of you are free. We should get going," noted Jepson. He looked at his watch. "Marathon of Detective Hemlock is about to start, and I hate to miss any of it. My daughter is picking me up, so she should be outside right now." "Thank you, Mr. Gray, for all your help." I shook his hand in appreciation. "It was fun," grinned Jepson. "Not often I get to argue with the police anymore." Molly and I escorted Jepson to his car, making certain he got there safely. After the Grays left, Thelma pulled up in her Meteor. "I thought you could use a ride," suggested a pert Thelma. Bea was already in the passenger seat, so Molly and I climbed into the back of the vehicle. "It was the most fun I've had in ages. It even beats breaking into the White Oaks golf course rental shop." "You broke into a golf rental shop?" questioned Molly in surprise. "And I was almost arrested," I sighed, remembering. Armand caught us looking for the murder weapon which had killed Ethel Merle. Thankfully, Al Fricks, the owner of the White Oaks Resort and Golf Club, refused to press charges, and I was let go. "You never told me," an indignant Molly said. "Not exactly my proudest moment," I retorted mildly. "Thank you, Thelma and Bea, for the sit-in. It really helped. I think we could have been there for hours more if you hadn't protested." "It was Mabel's idea," confessed Bea. "She's always a bit of a hippie, but it worked." The police chief bowed to public pressure. "Why did they keep you overnight?" questioned Thelma. "The police thought my baking had killed Bart," muttered Molly in disgust. "It was a magic brownie, not a deadly one. Since it was found in his hand at the crime scene with a bite out of it, they automatically assumed I had murdered the fat doughboy." My eyebrows furrowed as I thought over what Armand had said about the murder. "Didn't the lab report say it wasn't any brownie in Bart's stomach?" "Yeah, so?" shrugged Molly. "They let you read the lab report?" Bea perked up with interest. "We overheard Armand and the chief talking about it," I informed her. "So, if Bart didn't eat any of our brownie, why did someone take a bite out of it? It wasn't Bart who bit into it unless he immediately spit it out." "That is a great question," mused Bea. "Perhaps someone was trying to frame you." "The murderer knew that all the food would have to be tested for poison, if it was the method for how Bart died," objected Thelma. "Even I know that much, and I don't watch those crime shows Bea loves. It would be really silly to try to frame Ivy and Molly with an unpoisoned brownie." "Not if they were going to try to make an escape," insisted Bea. "The confusion would give them enough time to leave town." Or maybe Marshmallow just grabbed it out of someone's hand just to be rude, right before he died, muttered Molly. Bart Baker's like a dough which has too much yeast. Useless, and it just keeps expanding and flowing in the heat. Do you think Bart saw his killer before he died? Maybe the killer bit into the brownie, an excited Thelma exclaimed. I wonder what the poison was in. I contemplated the odd case. Whatever it was in is key to the investigation. Armand said I wasn't going to like it when the police arrested their next suspect. They have a suspect? Questioned B. Who? Armand wouldn't tell us, I replied. The police are getting an arrest warrant as we left. Maybe we should hang out in front of the police station and see who they arrest, suggested B. Please, I begged them. I would love a hot shower, some food, and a real bed. Can we just wait for the rumor mill to bring us the news of who is being arrested for the murder of Bart? I promise, after I've had some sleep, I will be more in the mood for discussing this. I second the motion, agreed Molly tiredly. This has been a roller coaster. I seriously thought the cops were going to be lazy and just pin the whole thing on me. We hired Jepson so that wouldn't happen, explained Thelma. We knew he could get you out with all the legal mumbo-jumbo he knows. I thought he was doing it pro bono. I frowned in confusion. I really couldn't afford to pay lawyer fees on top of everything else. We bribed him with your baking, informed B. You owe him treats for the month. He's partial to anything a little spicy, or rum cake in particular. You make a good rum cake, nodded Molly with a yawn. Sure, I readily conceded. Baking seemed a much safer way to pay the debt I owed him. Thelma and Bee dropped Molly off at her camper and then me at mine. I was informed Herb had been taking care of Cookie and Cupcake between his shifts at the police station for the protest. During Herb's shift, Conrad had looked after the pair of doggies. I don't know what I would do without everyone here, I said truthfully, feeling a little emotional. Everyone at the Happy Camper Resort had become my family, taking care of me and helping me. I couldn't do this without all of you. Oh, pooh, exclaimed Bee. Don't you get all emotional. Then Thelma will start to cry and ruin her makeup. It takes days for her to make herself look perfect. Don't undo her hard work. Look, Conrad is coming with the dogs, pointed out Thelma as she wiped a tear. You had better go say hi to them. The little creatures must have missed you. I got out of the car and hugged my 2 little Boston Terriers. Cupcake happily danced and licked me while Cookie tolerated the attention. I missed you so much. Thank you for taking care of them, Conrad. It's too bad I didn't get to see them free you at the station, said Conrad as he handed over the leashes. However, someone had to take care of our mascots. Between Herb, Mabel, and I, we did okay. Thank you again, I reiterated, giving the surprised tiny man a hug. Conrad patted my shoulder uncomfortably. You had better have a nap. When women get tired, they get overly emotional. Go on with you. I figured it was Conrad's way of saying you're welcome. With a watery smile, I unlocked my camper and set about to having a shower, new clean clothes, then fell into bed with my cuddly mascots. An insistent knocking awoke me. Cookie immediately sat up straight, trying to stare out the window with a low growl in her voice. Cupcake jumped off the bed, then bounced onto the seat of the dinette set so she could see outside and barked joyously at the commotion. Groaning, I looked at my phone for the time, but found the battery was dead. Rolling out of bed, I pushed back my hair, and after shushing the dogs, I opened the door. A tearful Ava looked up at me. Ivy, I need your help. Ava, what's wrong? I asked, motioning for her to come into my camper. Come inside. She sniffed, pressing a wet tissue to her eyes as she sat down at my dinette. The police have arrested Jackson. I stared at her in shock. What? You know Jackson Grubbs, she explained. The guy who runs the produce and honey stand at the farmer's booth? He also owns Grubbs Fresh Farm Produce. It's a small farm just outside of town. I've met Jackson, yes, I nodded. I couldn't imagine the nice friendly guy who had defended me against Tom Frick just last month being arrested. What happened? They've charged him with the murder of Bart Baker. Ava shook her head in consternation. I just don't understand. Jackson wouldn't hurt anyone. He's the nicest guy I know. We've been friends since preschool, and I know him. There has to be some mistake. No wonder Armand had warned me I wouldn't like it when the police made the arrest of their newest suspect. Jackson Grubbs wasn't a murderer. I agree, I told her. It can't be Jackson. Ava had a watery sigh. I want to hire you to investigate. You can prove Jackson is innocent. Ava, I warned her, I'm not a professional investigator. You've solved Ethel Merley's murder, she insisted. You can do this. Jackson needs you. It was entirely by accident, I told Ava. Tawny's cat Winifred should get the credit. I found the cat, but without Winnie, we wouldn't have known for certain what happened to Ethel. Please, Ivy, begged Ava, starting to cry in earnest. I don't know what else to do. Jackson will have a lawyer, but the police must have some sort of proof, even if the evidence is wrong. I need you to dig around and find out who really killed Bart. I took her hand, giving it a squeeze. I'll try, but you are not paying me since I don't know how much help I will be. Thank you, Ivy. I knew I could count on you, replied a relieved Ava. I offered her a box of tissues. Now, I'm going to make you a cup of tea. Gather your thoughts, and once we have the tea, you can tell me everything you know about what happened with Jackson's arrest, okay? Ava nodded, trying to rein in her emotions. She blew her nose while I set the water on to boil and put out a couple of mugs. I chose chamomile tea, hoping it would calm Ava down a little. After pouring the tea, I put out a package of lemon snaps left over from the market. Here. Taking a seat across from her, I waited for Ava to gather her thoughts. I was painting at the farm. Ava cleared her throat, taking a sip of tea. I do that sometimes. Just go and paint outside the Grubbs farm. The place is peaceful, and I can find my creative center there. My shop is closed on Mondays, so I can get extra commission jobs and projects like this done. She paused, and I waited patiently for her to continue. Jackson was spraying the lettuce for bugs. The farm is all organic, and he had a special mix he makes himself from non-harmful products like soap and spices, Ava assured me. She took a tissue and began shredding it to pieces. The police came. They had a search warrant. They looked all over the farm. Then there was commotion in the shed. Afterward, the police arrested Jackson and took him away. Do you know what the police found in the shed? I asked gently. Ava nodded in distress. I didn't see it, but I could hear Jackson say something about a pesticide. He was objecting, saying he had never seen it before. Jackson's farm is organic. He doesn't use harsh chemicals. If the pesticides were sprayed on his property, he could lose his organic standing. The police thought Bart had been poisoned, and pesticides contain poisons. I hesitated. Did Jackson ever fill orders for the Tasty Treats bakery? I would presume so, shrugged Ava helplessly. He does a lot of deliveries for businesses around Oaks Crossing. It meant Jackson would have the opportunity and the murder weapon. However, did he have any motive? I privately wondered. Why would the police think Jackson would want to murder Bart Baker? I mused, cupping my chin in my hand as I thought about it. Did they argue? No, I don't think so, responded Ava uncertainly. Jackson doesn't like to argue with people. Bart isn't the nicest of persons, but not liking someone isn't a reason to kill them. Did Bart owe Jackson money? I pressed gently. If the rumors were true, Bart had a lot of money issues. I'm not sure. Again, Ava shrugged. If the orders aren't paid after a certain amount of time, Jackson just stops delivering new food items until the customer's paid back up to date. I'm sure money wasn't an issue. It didn't make sense. I personally couldn't think why Jackson Grubbs would want to kill Bart Baker. Unless the police knew something we didn't, there was no motive for this murder. Ava, I'm going to need you to visit Jackson. We need to know everything he knows, what his lawyer is saying, what the official charges are, and what evidence the police have against him. In the meanwhile, I'm going to find out as much as I can about Bart Baker. Thank you, a reassured Ava said. I feel so much better with you helping. Jackson means the world to me, and I know he's innocent. There was a knocking at my door. Cupcake and Cookie barked a welcome, so I knew it was someone from the campground. I opened the door to find Thelma, Bee, and Conrad outside. Did you hear? Asked Thelma in concern. I just can't quite believe it. The police in this town have certainly lost their common sense. It's an outrage, that's what it is. Ava's car is outside, a practical Bee stated. I'm sure Ivy knows Jackson Grubbs has been arrested. Ridiculous, sniffed Conrad. Anyone who knows Jackson knows the boy never uses pesticides. Once he had slugs on Grubbs' farm. He called up old Carmichael and borrowed the man's flocks of ducks to eat the slugs. Afterwards, Jackson returned the ducks fatter for the experience. No, he would never use a pesticide. How did you know it was a pesticide used in the murder method? I asked in surprise. I had it from Mrs. Hemble, declared Bee. She was picking up her weekly grocery order at the farm. I looked at Ava to confirm this. She might have been there, replied Ava uncertainly. Truth be told, I'm not sure. I know someone was picking up produce, but I was so upset over the police and Jackson, I just didn't pay attention. It's understandable, honey, said Thelma as she entered my camper. She took a seat beside Ava, wrapping an arm around her shoulders. Conrad, would a pesticide kill Bart so quickly? I wondered. Conrad and Bee took over the other seat in my dinette, and I made more tea for everyone. A lot of pesticides contain strychnine. Typically, it takes 15 minutes to an hour for symptoms to appear. Then death is a slow process as the body's muscles spasm uncontrollably. Conrad scratched his chin, putting his experience as a former coroner to good use. However, Bart wasn't exactly in the best of shape. If he had any heart troubles, he might have died quicker. What sort of symptoms? I wondered, thinking back to the farmer's market when Bart had confronted me in front of Fergie. Would sweating a lot be one of the symptoms? Sure, agreed Conrad, ticking the symptoms off his fingertips. Sweating, agitation, jaw tightness, difficulty breathing, muscle soreness, rigidity in the arms and legs, and arching of the back and neck. Then the muscle spasms set in. If the dose ingested is high enough, the victim could have respiratory failure or brain death. Strychnine poisoning is not a nice way to die. I shuddered. As much as I hadn't liked Bart, I would never want anyone to die in such a way. That's awful. Why do you ask about the sweating? Questioned Bee with curiosity. When Bart was at the farmer's market the morning of his death, he was sweating a lot, I explained. I know he was agitated about the whole baking contest for the booth. The agitation might be explained away, but the sweating can't. I think Bart was also a little stiff-legged as he left, but that might be my imagination. Then we have got a possible timeline, a satisfied Conrad concluded. Within the hour before Bart came to your booth, he may have been poisoned. It was a food item, I recalled from the lab reports. Something Bart had eaten was laced with the poison. Whatever he had eaten would have to be pretty sweet to counteract the bitter taste of strychnine, revealed Bee. At our looks of surprise, she elaborated. In the poisoned pedestrian, the killer used strychnine. He was giving out examples of candy to random people, and the detectives in the book had a ridiculously hard time figuring out who the killer was. You should read it. I would rather not. A subdued Ava sipped her tea. Bee patted her hand. I'm sorry, dear. I sometimes get a little carried away. Who all has access to pesticides? I asked. Almost everyone, explained Conrad. You can pick up a container at the local hardware store. It was not encouraging information, I decided. Look, trying to find the poison itself is a lost cause, responded Conrad. It probably was from the container they found at Grubb's farm. Jackson said the container wasn't his, insisted Ava. It isn't his, agreed Conrad. It doesn't mean it wasn't planted by our killer. In fact, I doubt the police will find any fingerprints on the container. No, we can't focus on the poison. So we focus on the food the poison was in, and finding out who would want Bart Baker dead, I concluded. It could be a long list, warned Thelma. I grabbed a pen and paper. Then let's get started.